World of Warcraft Classic has a total of 9 different classes to play, which all have their own unique playstyle. I personally like Warrior because my favourite thing to do in this game is charge face first into any mob that I see, and of course get absolutely rolled in PvP. However, a couple weeks back, I decided to start a new character on a new class for a couple of different reasons. Firstly, so that I can experience the game all over again, but from a completely different point of view. Secondly, I want to use this character to make gold, because as a warrior main, I don't really have many options for gold making outside of maybe doing professions. One thing that has really attracted me to playing a mage is the weird and slightly ridiculous things that it can do, like leveling entirely through AoE farming or using a fence to kill a high level mob. Last time I learned the very basics of AoE farming, and I think I got it down pretty good, but today I want to take that just another step further and take on my hardest mage challenge yet, and that would be the Zul'Farrak solo XP farm. Should I be successful, this farm will grant me a boatload of XP and gold, but I'm not sure a new player like myself is ready for such a high level farm. In order for me to be able to run this Zul'Farrak farm, I have been advised to wait until level 42, and I was currently level 40, so I decided that it was time to run some Scarlet Cathedral, since last time the Spellcleave group for Graveyard wasn't quite what I was looking for, but I know for a fact that Cathedral Spellcleave can get pretty crazy. We enter into the first courtyard area of the dungeon, and I offered to pull the right side of the room, and one of the other mages would pull the left side. Then we would meet in the middle, and both of us would ice block. All was well, but the other mage used a premature blizzard, which caused the caster mobs to freak out. So we had to back up and LOS, and with a bit of patience and a hell of a lot of wanding, we did manage to clean up all of the mobs. For the second room, my ice block was obviously on cooldown, so 2 of the other mages pulled the room, and this time the mobs were actually in a pretty good position, and we began to pelt them to death with blizzard. Since I had aggro, I quickly hit the mobs with a frost nova and LOS'd them, and the team were able to clean them up pretty nicely. And now for the last part, the biggest pool of the entire dungeon. Now usually you would clear the entire cathedral before even touching the boss, because normally if you tag the boss before clearing everything, all of the remaining mobs would start sprinting towards you, and on the regular that would be a pretty bad situation, but for 4 mages and a priest, it's an absolute dream. Holy crap. Oh my god. What the f- What the hell, dude? That is insane! What? Oh my god. That is crazy. A couple of mages can do that? Afterwards, I decided to take a little trip back to Stormwind for a couple of different reasons. First of all, so that I could update all of my abilities for the first time since like level 30, but also to pick up my first mount on this character. So I headed out of the gates of Stormwind and started making my way towards the lumberyard, where I could both learn my riding skill and purchase my mount. Well, thank God I don't have to travel like that anymore. Since my horse on my main character was the Black Stallion, I thought it would be nice to get a different one this time, and I went with the Chestnut Mare. Afterwards, me and my newly acquired mount, which still needs a name by the way, headed back to Scarlet Monastery. And since it was quite late now, I struggled to find a Spellcleave group for Cathedral. In fact, I couldn't even find a Cathedral group in general, so I had to settle for a couple of normal armory runs, which I had done a gazillion times before on my warrior. But you know, it was quite nice actually, remembering all of the good times way back when last month. Those were the days, man. We quickly made our way to Herod after pulling 2 mobs at a time for half an hour, and luckily for the paladin, a nice ravager dropped for him. I did try my best to find a cathedral group, but I had no luck. And I guess that was understandable since it was 1:30 AM on a Wednesday and all of the normal people had went to sleep. So I once again settled for an armory run. No spicy loot this time though. And then I made the responsible decision to actually log off for the night. I logged on the next day with only a couple of hours of sleep because I have a crippling addiction to World of Warcraft. Since it was now early, there wasn't too many people online yet, and I settled for a cathedral group of 2 mages and a warlock that was 2 light years away from the dungeon. Please, someone tell me why people queue for Scarlet Monastery if they are all the way in Booty Bay. It happens every time, and why? Since this wasn't a Giga Chad Spellcleave group, the pools obviously weren't as big as before, but it was still technically a Spellcleave group, and we were still pulling relatively large pools, but nothing compared to what it was like yesterday. Halfway through the dungeon, we managed to ding level 41, which is always great, and we did attempt to pull the entire cathedral, but yeah, so we had to stick to just clearing it normally. How boring. So now that we were level 41 and still had an entire level until I could start farming Zul'Farrak, I decided a little change of scenery would be nice and decided to head over to Razorfen Downs, since there would be quite a few nice pieces of loot to get from here, like the Death Mage sash, the Robes of the Lich, and maybe even the Plague Rot Sprig. The only issue I had is that there were no flight paths in Kalimdor, and I thought it would be good to just get them all done and out of the way. I patiently waited for everyone to arrive for almost a whole hour, with my quest log absolutely filled and ready. Once everyone was finally here, we got started straight away, clearing our way through the winding halls of this overly complicated dungeon towards the first boss, Cash, who we completely skipped and went straight to Mordresh the Fire Eye. I don't really know why, but whatever. Mordresh has the chance to drop the Death Mage sash belt piece, which would be quite nice actually, since I was yet to find a good waist piece. I also happened to die due to using Arcane Explosion a little too close, and in my defense, I thought the little calcium men had way less health than they actually do. Also, no belt, just the boss's skull. And then we went back to Cash. I still don't know why we didn't just do it initially. Luckily for the tank, he did get his lovely chest piece though. We continue to make our way through the dungeon and take down a Glutton, who doesn't carry any loot that I care about, but he also didn't drop the only piece of loot that's worth anything. We press on, making our way up the tall spiraling rock in the center until we eventually reach the final boss, Amnanar, who unfortunately didn't drop the robe we were after, but a relatively useful pair of gloves dropped, so I snapped those anyway. So I now had a Razorfen Downs run under my belt, but we were still a little bit away from level 42, and I still really wanted to get that robe, so I headed back into the dungeon for another run, which I of course forgot to hit record on, well at least for the first boss anyway, but we started on a part that we didn't do on the first run, the escort quest, and it is a pretty typical escort quest. We escort a guy to this altar thingy, and we protect him as he channels some sort of ability. We clear wave after wave of mobs until eventually the boss Plague Maw the Rotting spawns, and he has the chance to drop the Plague Rot Sprig wand. And what do you know, it actually did. Not a massive upgrade by any means, but I'll take it regardless. After that, we continue the dungeon like normal, killing Mordresh, but being responsible when killing the skeletons this time, killing Glutton, and then finally Amnanar, who did drop the robe we wanted, and wow, that's purple. So obviously 2 runs of Razorfen Downs isn't going to give me enough XP to level up. So what did I do to get the remaining amount of XP? Well, I did a little bit of AoE farming, and then I paid for a boost that I didn't record out of pure shame, which means it was time to take on Zul'Farrak. As eager as ever, I made my way over to Tanaris and set my Hearthstone in Gadgetsan, and then quickly made my way over to the dungeon. Now, I had done a solid amount of research. I had all the consumables I needed, and I knew all the safe spots, so I was feeling pretty confident. So I mounted up and began running towards the farming spot. I pulled mob after mob, and was only a few feet away from the first safe spot, but died. Now, I just thought that maybe I did something wrong, and I wanted to give it another go, so I applied my shields and started running. This time, not making it as far as the last. I just thought that maybe I was too low level, or maybe the strategy I was using was flawed. So I went back to researching and watching videos when I came across a video, a great video by the way, which talks about using invisibility potions to skip a significant amount of the mobs, which was a bit different than all of the other videos I had watched, but I just thought, what could the harm be, right? So I quickly grabbed some potions and got started. We first used this lesser invisibility potion to skip these first pack of mobs, which can later be done by just being a higher level. Then we scale up this wall, as you do, and then jump down and mount, and then run over to this other wall, which is also a safe spot. We then pop a regular invisibility potion and run as far as we can before it runs out. We continue to run, popping every shield and piece of utility we possibly can, but eventually we did die, because for some reason I didn't use ice barrier. But that was the furthest we had gotten so far. I mean, the farming spot was right there, so I reset and tried again. This time I actually used blink in a responsible place instead of sending myself straight into a wall, which proved to be a big reason as to why my last attempt failed. Once we made it to Theka, I kinda thought that this would be the end of the run since he dazed me, but with a Frost Nova and a well-timed blink, we were able to get into the farming spot and reset the mobs. And now that we had learned how to actually get to the farming spot, we now had to learn how to do the actual farm. So I popped both Mana Shield and Ice Barrier and activated the boss. Then started opening up all of the graves on the right side, and luckily there is another reset spot right behind this pot, which is very convenient, almost too convenient, you know? We then run up the other side and do the same thing before resetting once again in this same spot. And then for the last time, we open up these graves that are tucked away in the corner. And that was it. We had done it. Everything was set, and I was so excited to finally get the chance at completing the farm. So I began the pull with a rank 1 flame strike as the video instructed me to do, used my wand to aggro the boss, and got stuck. Feeling frustrated with myself, I obviously thought that that was enough World of Warcraft for the day. Logging on the next day after a reasonable amount of sleep, I was feeling refreshed and ready to grind out Zul'Farrak. And using the exact same strategy as yesterday, we had seemingly mastered the art of actually getting to the farming spot. But obviously, we were yet to actually complete a run. And well, there's really only one way to learn, so I began popping all of the graves. And once everything was ready, I once again opened with a flame strike and wanding the boss, and this time obviously trying not to get stuck. And now all I had to do was jump back and forth across these two walls until the mobs were nicely grouped together. And the way I did this was by first using a rank 1 blizzard in order to make sure all the mobs were slowed and stacked together, and then sending in a rank 3 blizzard, or maybe rank 4, whatever it was that I had at the time, and then it was just rinse and repeat. And really only about 5 minutes later, the mobs began to start dying. And pay attention to my XP bar, because the amount of XP we get is crazy. How insane is that? Level 42, and we just got half a level in under 20 minutes. On my warrior, each level was taking maybe a minimum of 4 hours, so being able to do it in 30 minutes on a mage is just crazy to me. And you know, the weird thing is, even after struggling so much to learn this farm, after I had done it once, I really had no issue at all. Well, apart from the occasional death here and there, which I think is expected, especially considering that it's me that's doing it. But over the next 2 days, I would do basically nothing but farm this dungeon over and over and over again. And we got all the way to level 54 in what felt like record time. And that's when I learned about another farm, one that might be even more insane than this one. Hope you all enjoyed today's video because I enjoyed making it. I always do. First thing, thank you all so much for 2,000 subscribers. That is crazy. In a month, we go from 1,000 to 2,000 subscribers. That is insane. So thank you guys for that. Second of all is if you are an artist with open commissions, then please feel free to contact me and we can maybe discuss something together. Thirdly, I am thinking about using the channel memberships feature thingy. I really don't know what I'm going to do with it, but I do have some ideas. Things like exclusive content, early access to content, and the big one, which I think is going to be unreleased videos, deleted videos, and unlisted videos. So all videos that have been deleted and removed, and all videos that I have decided not to release for one reason or another. If that is something you guys are interested in, then please let me know in the comments. Anyway, I think I've yapped enough now. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day, and I will see you all later.